October 5th, estimated population of Nigeria, 202.3 million people. Estimated population of Africa, 1.3 billion. Now, as at Monday this week, estimated number of Nigerians living in extreme poverty, 94.4 million. So lay that against 202.3. That gives you an idea based on the poverty barometer, which counts every day. But there are even more things to worry about in terms of the implications of this. Number one, the population is growing very fast at the rate of 2.61% per annum and has a trajectory that is, if nothing changes today and we continue like this, by 2050 we'll be the third most populated country in the world. So now, that means number is increasing, but what are the details of that which will give the pointers in dealing with poverty? The second thing there is that Nigeria has one of the highest fertility rates in the world. That's about 5.6. That means on the average Nigerian woman in childbearing age bears 5.6 children. That's sobering. Again, distribution of the population spatially between 1990 and now, more Nigerians have left rural areas for the urban areas. Urban population today in Nigeria, 51.2%. That's a switch from what it was some 29 years ago, which means the urban areas are now congested. And when you think back of those days we were taught sociology and demography, that one of the great challenges of rapid urbanization is one thing we call anonymity. Anonymity means I come into a large space where there are many people. That gives me immunity to misbehave, because nobody will call me, are you not the same or so and so? Which is prevalent in the rural areas. But not only that, they come into a place like Lagos, and then you see a different dimension. So what are the consequences of poverty? Now, the most sobering part to this is that poverty today breeds poverty in the future. So in which case, if we don't address it today, it will remain tomorrow and also grow. Secondly, physical health challenges, which are evidenced in malnutrition, especially in children, then maternal and infant mortality. Mental health challenges, which is adduced usually to emotional stress that results from relative deprivation. And there is also some association of poverty to crime, especially violent crime. I have some references in my slides here as to studies conducted when and by whom. But generally, poverty associates with high mortality rates and thus lower life expectancy. You know, there are times I want to joke and I say, hey, wait a minute. I'm already above 60 years of age. If I look at life expectancy in Nigeria at about 54 years, and I want to interpret it mechanically, I will say maybe I'm already doing overtime. Okay? Because I'm above the life expectancy on the average generally for Nigerians. But should it really be so? That means there is an urgent need for intervention. What then is the nature of this poverty in Nigeria? Why is Nigeria characterized as the poverty capital of the world? Looking only at income and consumption, spend, can be misleading in characterizing poverty in Nigeria. There is the Nigerian or African communal living and fraternity that strive on looking out for your neighbors and therefore give the so-called poor man access to life's basics that are beyond his income. And that is where this whole discourse connects to entrepreneurs and connects to certain activities and programs of government. In fact, for the government, there are three levels. The first level for government is policy, design, and then sequencing of its components. And then comes the programs to execute the policy, and then following that will be specific projects. So for government, it is usually 3 P's: policy, programs, and projects. Now, when you dimension the spending of a typical salary earner, you can't readily reconcile this with his income. I mean, reconcile his income to his consumption. Amazing still, in some instances, is that this person gets into a ROSCA scheme. ROSCA spells ROSCA, which means Rotating Savings and Credit Association, or ISUSU. Now, all of these are ways and means by which the man who is poor today, by definition, is not out today and making trouble for everybody. But we must not wait till he starts making trouble, but rather begin to do things today. Now, in my view, the pointers to poverty are not just those econometric issues, but answers to the following questions. The first: do people beg for food? When you see that happening around you, that tells you you don't need people like me to come and tell you the theory of poverty. Do people relish used items of clothing, shoes, household materials, etc.? Do people live in indecent houses, like abandoned or uncompleted properties, or even on refuse dumps? So the larger the number of people suffering this among the population, the higher the reality of poverty. Now, let's come to the real issue here. Now, what does the Bible say about poverty? Because we must not lose sight of this. In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 11, the Bible makes it clear that the poor shall never cease in the land. But that means we always have the poor. But they don't have to be in large numbers. But also the Bible says in Deuteronomy 15, verses 4 to 6, and also in 11, 13 to 15, that there shall not be poor among the people of God if they follow his instructions. That means the instructions of God will make people within the church not be poor on the one hand, and that the church also, as God's representative, will influence the society such that the number of the poor in the society will also reduce. And we are thankful for Foursquare Gospel Church for having us discuss today. We can then take the major stakeholders. What should they be doing at this point in time? And that is like the joke we consultants make. That in the early years, when some of us came into consulting, what they used to teach us is, you just get to a client, ask him to give you his wristwatch so that you can tell him what the time is. That is no value added. Value gets added if I have to borrow your wristwatch, not just to tell you time, but to tell you what you should be doing at this time of the day. So question then is, what should Nigeria be doing at this time of the day? And that talks to why poverty is prevalent in Nigeria. Poor leadership that cuts across all segments of the society. The illusion we had over the years of a wealthy nation where expectations from governments are huge. Everybody looks to government to solve all their problems. Thirdly, we have had a culture that celebrates mediocrity and rewards ill-gotten wealth. There are, of course, eroded societal values that has taken our youth to begin to say things like this: get rich by any means or die. Now, question is that godly? We expect a nation that is prosperous, but we teach our children not what counts before God, but put emphasis on how to count, which are two different things. We teach them how to count, but we don't teach them what counts. There's also the lack of courage on the part of most of us to do that which is right before God. I will skip a few things here that we can get details because there are issues. So what are the two keys to breaking the back of poverty? Number one, jobs. And how do we create jobs? We've been talking about this for years in Nigeria. Job creation is the way out. But until we align what we consume with what we produce, we will remain in the throes of unemployment as a harbinger of poverty. For every Nigerian that buys something produced abroad, you are simply creating jobs offshore. So if we want to start creating jobs here, we should deliberately begin to consume what is made in Nigeria. But it doesn't stop there. Now this is my context and interpretation of it. There is the mantra, and I believe I know this very well, that Mr. President loves this very much, made in Nigeria. And this was the way I had the privilege at the Economic Summit some 4 years ago, 2015, 2016. I had the privilege of being the chairman of the Central Organizing Committee of the Nigeria Economic Summit. So 2016, what we chose was made in Nigeria. And I now interpreted it this way, that made in Nigeria has 3 legs connected to economic activities, which are in 3 planks of production, exchange, and consumption. So on the production leg, made in Nigeria will be treated as the concept they use in India, which they call make in India. In which case, make Nigeria conducive for manufacturing. As far back as March 1990, I attended a conference in Paris whose theme was making Africa manufacturing ground for the world. I'm talking of March 1990. I was at that conference. But the question is, today, how many years after? How is Africa? How is Nigeria? Then, of course, the made in Nigeria leg for consumption means we will choose deliberately to buy things made in Nigeria. Why should I be looking for imported rice when there's Coscari's rice in the market? Why should I say I prefer rice imported? Because it comes by the brand made in. Why not made in Nigeria? And so the question is simply this. If government provides leadership, and I was happy the federal government did that, when the VP as acting president signed an executive order that 30% of federal government budget annually will be devoted to things made in Nigeria. I was happy when the government adopted that. But what I also said then, which is the incomplete part that I want us to bring into this conversation, is that we should have that as a standing policy and have it legislated, which means get into our Fiscal Responsibility Act and also adopt it as a policy that runs for the next 10 years, where we raise that percentage from 30 up onto 80%. Now, if 8.92 trillion this year federal government budget, let's assume it is fully executed, 30% of that is quite significant to buy things made in Nigeria, and that will create jobs here rather than offshore. Then, of course, the other key issue is education. We must educate our children for Nigeria, and that means to review and completely overhaul school curriculum to align with the town. We talk about the gown and the town, but most of the time we produce graduates that are not work fit or job ready. So how do we achieve that? We must begin to place emphasis on technical skills. And we can take a cue from China. China indeed converted some of its universities to polytechnics, when he discovered that polytechnic graduates are more relevant in the industries of today and also looking at the future of work. There is a survey that talks about the world of work in year 2065. In which case, what kind of people will we need in the workspace in 2065? What kind of training should we begin to give them now? How do we develop a society where our children can compete anywhere in the world? And let me drop this also as a passing remark. People say that educational system in Nigeria has gone down the drain, and I disagree with them. My reason is very simple. I like evidence-based research. And that research tells me that when we produce those graduates here, and they step out for graduate studies abroad, they easily come on top of their class. And that's for real. As at 1st of October this year, there's a university professor that came as a visitor to Nigeria and shared this openly. And I've heard this variously from several. In fact, even from my personal experience, a very interesting one. I was on scholarship in UK in 1984, October to December. Only 10 weeks. After spending 8 weeks with my professor, the man said he had never seen a student like this in his life. And he was an old man. He said, look, enough for study. Just get away from me. Just go and look at how UK is like. Meaning that he never saw a student as hardworking. And ladies and gentlemen, Nigerians are hardworking people. Hardworking. We are. So, coming to the church, why do we have poor people in the church? That's talking about what the church can do about poverty. I will put it to two things. And I talk about the church, universal, and bringing it down to Nigeria in particular. The reason some are poor in the church is because these children of God will not follow his template for living. Because the Bible says in Proverbs chapter 10 verse 15b that the poverty of the poor is their destruction. That means their poverty starts from the mind. The mind that tells them that there is someone in church I can look up to and just walk up to, get some money, I don't need to work. So every Sunday they therefore come to church, or all they do is target somebody. This is the person that will sustain me this week. And so they don't want to work. And that is contrary to the word of God. Because the word of God says that this is not because I don't love you, but simply if a man will not work, let him not eat. That's the Bible, plain and simple. Now, secondly, the church is not living up to its godly mandate. The church is the light in this God's world. This world belongs to God. He created it. So the church is the light, and it must make the difference. So in which case, the system here runs on principles. And anytime we disregard principles, it comes with consequences. And that is why we have prevalent poverty in Nigeria today. What 4 things should the church do? Number 1, the church should teach people how to get out of poverty or avoid falling into that bucket, as we heard earlier. The church also, in that context, should resource people. And that is very clear in Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 15. Where God said, I will give you pastors after my heart that will feed my sheep, that will teach them. We need to teach the wholesome word of God on the pathway to wealth. God is not an ATM. Because many times, believers go to God and ask him, give me this, give me that. We forget that there has to be a relationship. The church also will not teach principles of give your way out of lack in a manipulative manner. One of the principles of living is sowing and reaping. But not that if I give 1,000, I will give my way out of lack. No, it doesn't work that way. God worked. Jesus worked. That's John chapter 5 verse 17. And we are meant to also work to make money. Number 2, there is the empowerment side to the church. What schemes can the church set up to assist those that are economically active? And that is talking about what happens in the microfinance space. I consult there at least in the last 7 years. I've been active in that sector. Microfinance schemes in churches can also go a long way in addressing poverty. But the way it must go, because all over the world, not just in Nigeria, church welfare schemes have been abused. So the church therefore must be conscious of that. We don't put resources in the hands of people from the church who have nothing specific that they are doing. So they must be economically active. And that is very, very important. Then also, the church must be willing to correct and call people to order, no matter their financial or social status. And that's what it says in Titus chapter 1, verses 10 to 13. Then the fourth one, and I'm happy that the federal government is powerfully represented here. I call it talking to power. That the church must recognize its moral authority over those who are in positions of authority politically. Rulers should defer to pastors the way they did throughout the Bible, not the other way around. So let me now move on and attempt to answer the question, what can the government do? From data available, governments don't do or grow business. You will see that in my slides. But if you take this year's budget of federal government, assuming they spend everything 100%, take the revenue of all the state governments and local governments in 2018, and then maybe add some 15% to that, assuming they borrow more money this year or whatever. Add it all together, it represents just about 10% of Nigeria's estimated GDP for 2019. That means government spending represents 10% of our GDP. 90% is coming from the entrepreneurs and the rest of us. So that means government really is designed to facilitate. It is an illusion to expect government to create jobs. And we must be very realistic with ourselves. Government lacks the resources to pull Nigeria out of poverty alone. So if that must happen, that is, eradicate poverty, then government must get seriously into facilitating business. And that means, what do we do on the back of the good news about Nigeria? Among the top 20 reforming economies in the world in 2018, so the question is, what next? In fact, from my research, I've discovered that population is not a problem. Because China thought population is a problem many years ago. And so they said, let's introduce a population policy. Every couple, one child. And then if a couple chooses not to have children, financial reward. But by the time China brought 23.1% of its population from below to above the poverty line, they realized that the number is not a problem. It is having them gainfully employed. So China said, you know what? No population control anymore. What we'll be thinking about is empowerment. And that empowerment comes from two ways: education and jobs. So what should government do in addition? The decision, and this is my interpretation of it, to return toll gates to expressways throughout the nation suggests to me that our government is ready to adopt the public-private partnership in infrastructure development and delivery. So it is not about tolling roads to generate revenue Rather, government should begin to consider that when we introduce this, let's map out roads that are commercially viable and allow the private sector, that's the entrepreneurs, to handle them. Then government should also seriously commit to buying made in Nigeria. What stops us? Adopting a particular automobile assembled in Nigeria, and then we say it doesn't matter your level. That is what we ride. We went as far as 70% local content in Project 504 before we abandoned it and it became history. Perhaps today it would have been a different story if we had adopted Project 504 as our national car. Because at 70% local content, there was jobs all over the place. Silencer from Benin City, battery from Ibadan. The hardcore components from a company in Kaduna, all over Nigeria like that. Components of Project 504. 70% local content. But what happened? We never build on that. Social intervention schemes. Excellent idea. Excellent project. But it needs to be resourced more. That means it is not enough to make budget allocation. We need to actually release the money for those schemes. What we have done in the last 3 years that the government started that is to have budget allocation, but we never released the full sum. So finally, what should entrepreneurs do? My first advice to entrepreneurs is to come in the paradigm. Thank you. In the paradigm shift from complaining to what I call creative venturing. The future of Nigeria is in the hands of entrepreneurs. And this is my interpretation of it. Wherever an entrepreneur connects in the value chain of production of anything whatsoever, usually you find jobs being created and the entrepreneur also creating wealth. So like I remarked earlier, how does it go? If the regular family in Nigeria on a daily basis, there's at least someone that eats rice, that tells me that is a product in need, and because we also use it. So any wise entrepreneur, that is what he or she should connect with. So all they need to do is look at what we consume on a daily basis. In fact, at times I play with numbers. 100 naira margin on a unit, and you sell 1.2 million units a day. That tells me an idea of what to make as margin on a daily basis. So, but how many of such things can we identify and key into? 202 million people, large consuming army. Nigerians buy just anything. We buy anything. No matter what you bring, we buy it. Including what is commonly called no testing electronics. A man enters the market to buy electronics and they say he shouldn't test it. Just pay and carry it. And he pays and carries it home. And then you ask him, what if this thing doesn't work when you get it? He says, it's my lock. It's your lock? Only in Nigeria. Why can't Nigeria wake up like Rwanda and say no longer will any Nigerian wear pre-used clothing? And Nigerians are men and women, children of dignity. Why should we wear what somebody else had already used and passed on? Rwanda has a population of 12 million people. Just about half of estimated population of Lagos. And yet they could take the bold initiative that led into what is happening now. And let me say this. Signing the African Free Trade Agreement, for me as an analyst, was a mistake for Nigeria. And I say that with every sense of responsibility. Because Nigeria is where the market is in Africa. and every other African country, and I can give evidence of the camera. All they do all around Africa, from what I know, is to lure people to their country with a promise that they can sell to Nigeria. I wouldn't know of a government that has come here several times, and I've been to Nnewi, to lure Nigerian entrepreneurs to that country, only to say, come to our country, we help you produce what you sell, then we help you sell it to Nigeria. True life story. So question is, what are we doing? What will help Nigeria by entrepreneurs is for them to source their material inputs locally and also professional services locally. If the big entrepreneurs don't connect to the micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises, we cannot create jobs in the numbers that will eradicate poverty. So, and like I've said repeatedly, the game changer is in the number. So, and I conclude. How can we change the narrative? The church will preach the message of God undiluted and the principles for living without compromise, and then provide assistance to the most vulnerable among its members. The government will produce or provide an environment conducive for business and recognize that partnership is not by announcement only, but by deliberate cutting of identified game changers. Which means government will get up from the respective offices the officials are and go after those entrepreneurs and now invite them to intervene in key sectors that can create a lot of jobs. There are 6 of them like that: agriculture, ICT, real estate, mining and quarrying, manufacturing, and trade. Those 6 sectors have dominated our economy in the last 10 years, between 76 and 82% of our GDP. So if we truly want to create jobs, that is where a lot of activities are taking place. And that is where entrepreneurs should look at on the one hand, and that is where government itself also should focus on in terms of incentives. Finally, entrepreneurs will become true to type. And how do I mean? Creative and also opportunistic. Because what entrepreneurs do all over the world is to look for opportunities. But if the opportunities exist, and all we think about is how to maximize the gains for my pocket, then little value will be created for the society. And so, the man that lives below the international poverty line also must find something worthwhile, godly, and rewarding to do. In which case, our graduates of higher institutions should shift from focusing on government for jobs or largesse. Rather, they should consider the needs that exist around them and then ask a question: how can I fill these needs around me? In the process of filling the need, you create a job for yourself, and you may likely create jobs for maybe a few others. Let's assume I create a job for myself and 4 others. That makes 5 of us. If 1 million like me do that, that means 5 million jobs. If 5 million like me do that, that translates to 25 million jobs. And then we can begin to break the back of poverty. Now, this is bold and audacious. Thinking differently. It all starts in the mind. We must also do things differently. And that means we will not listen to what the rest of the world tells us how to run our nation. And I say that also deliberately from my personal experience. Nobody will come to tell you how to run Nigeria that will benefit you against his interest. And I've seen that variously. I won't mention names, but I've encountered in meetings in the last maybe some 32 years as a professional in the public space globally, where Nigeria was to be discussed, and someone asked the question whether it was safe to have me in that meeting. And they told that person, the organization I worked for, that I was not a consultant but a full-time staff of that organization. And ladies and gentlemen, the door was locked so that nobody would come in and hear what they were discussing. And I know what I heard. So I took my personal experience from that and I said, never will I listen to an outsider tell me how we should run Nigeria, because it is their interest against our interest. I want to say a very big thank you to the General Overseer, the Council of the Church, the leadership. Of course, most importantly here, the chairman, well represented. And I also am privileged to have the panelists that will discuss this topic. My paths had crossed with all of them at one point in time in the past. So God bless you all.
Amen. Can we sustain the applause? Deep, sobering, incisive, and very productive. This is not just about talking about the problems, but highlighting takeaways for everybody. I hope members of the young generation are here, youth corpers, those looking for a job. Your days has been made. All you need to do is to tap in to what our resource person has said and then begin to roll out the job. The Lord will prosper your endeavors in Jesus' name. In order for us to maximize time, I like to, one after the other, begin to invite my panelists. I hope they are ready, they are eradicated. Let me start by inviting the moderator, whom from the CV is no doubt an erudite communication specialist, somebody who has navigated the whole gamut of communication, event management, reputation management, even in the university system. Join me as I welcome Mrs. Bumi Oke, the lead consultant, Ladybird Limited. Also, let's welcome Mr. John Obaro. An alumnus of the Ahmadu Bello University of Lagos, whose imprimatur, like I said, is clearly written on the Nigeria e-payment space. We are welcome, sir. A round of applause for him again. And the man with the Midas touch, Dr. Maduka. Can you join us, please? He's an alumnus of Harvard Business School, Executive Education Program. He served as the director, Access Bank, and was the president, Nigerian Table Tennis Federation for 12 years. Like I said, our path crossed in Zimbabwe in 1995. God worked in mysterious ways, and we are meeting here again after several years. I was a cub reporter at the Tell magazine then. Now, let us also welcome one of our own into his father's house. He's already seated, Mr. Tunde Lemo, chairman of FAMA, former deputy governor of the Central Bank. I nearly said Ogun State, of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Maybe something is in the offing for him, I don't know. So let me now hand over to our moderator.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. I think I have a mic. I don't know if it's working. I have a mic. I'm trying to test. Anyway, I can continue with the hand mic for now. First, let me say it's a privilege and a very big honor to be here this afternoon. As our keynote speaker said, you know, God works in mysterious ways. By finding myself here, I think it's not a coincidence. I believe it's a privilege from God, and I believe there's a reason. And I hope that reason will be fulfilled by the time we leave here. Fortunately, all the panelists, somehow I know them very well, but they don't know. But one was my client before, interesting. Mr. Obaro was my client. And as we go along, I'll be telling you, I've also followed Mr. Maduka because of his history. I mean, anybody that does brand building, you must know about brand building and cost stories. And as for our reverend, who has been a former CBN deputy governor and so on and so forth, of course, for those of us I've been the president of the Association of Advertising. I was actually at national conference. I have to follow history because I also want to make my contribution to brand building. And more importantly, there's a topic here. It says eradication. In fact, the word is eradicate. That is remove poverty. So without wasting too much time, I picked up a few things from our keynote speaker. And if I may just start by, before I ask my panelists to take about 5 minutes each to explain their perspective on how to eradicate. I'd like to first thank our Madam Chairman, who's representing the chairman, because I know that women are not here by coincidence. Because when our keynote speaker was talking about the misery index, in fact, let me tell you the fact that gave me hope. He started by saying that nothing remarkable happens without someone paying the price. And I thank God that Jesus Christ has paid the price. So we're all here, at least. Thank God for that. So at least we know there's still hope for all of us. But having said that, he talks about misery index. Sir, I've added my own from a woman's perspective. There were some indexes you put there that I think are not gender sensitive. We don't go into that grammar. Our own is, how much does it cost to cook a pot of soup? Those are the little indexes we are going to use to measure poverty. I think I'm speaking for all of us. You've told us about that there are 90 million people in Nigeria that are in poverty. I did my little analysis. That means at least they say we are 50% men, 50% women. That means 50% of those are women. And maybe about another 25% are children. Which means there's a serious issue on this poverty. It may look like it's a light topic, but it's actually a very deep and worrisome topic. And I'm sure we're all here concerned. So having said this misery index, the other thing I ask myself is that a woman that goes to hospital and is not sure whether she's going to come out of the labor room because of the fact that when she gets there, she can't pay for her medical bills. The husband, in fact, she has already known. Because you know, when she goes to the medical room, it's just her. No matter how much the husband can say, pray for you, whatever. The point I'm bringing out is that there are real issues and challenges. And the more rural we go to, the harder it becomes. But having said that, I want our panelists, I'm just giving our erudite panelists some areas to think about as they are talking, so that they will balance it, that we women too want to get out of poverty. It's not just the men who. Because they said a man who cannot provide. I was wondering if they would have put it, when they say a man that cannot provide for his family, is it just the man? Because I thought for a man not to provide, can you imagine the impact on the woman as well? So it is a topic that is really worthy. So let me not go on for too long. Let me start with Mr. Obaro, who was called first. There's no order here. I'm going to do it according to how you are called. You know, even in scripture, sometimes they call people for a purpose, according to numbers. So, sir, can you tell us in 5 minutes your own perspective of how do we eradicate poverty? Having heard this topic that I don't know if it's making us happier or gladder, but sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me start by especially thanking Dr. Adedipe for that very brilliant piece. Thank you very much. Incidentally, we were together at IMB, as he mentioned some time ago. And I agree with a lot of things he said. One of the things he mentioned was about jobs and jobs in Nigeria. So let me just start with that. Talking about jobs and jobs in Nigeria, I remember he talked about vehicles manufactured. There used to be one called Santana. And the advert, the byline then was, there's nothing more to add. So there's nothing more to add to Dr. Adedipe's speech. Incidentally, having said that, talking about vehicles, especially as we have Dr. Maduka here, on February 2nd, 2019, French car maker Renault, they announced that they were establishing an assembly plant in Ghana. March 22, 2019, Japanese car maker Suzuki announced plans to set up a production unit in Ghana. March 23rd, Nissan Motor unveiled its plan to open an assembly plant by 2022. It will have a capacity to produce 50,000 to 60,000 vehicles annually in Ghana. Recently again, Toyota topped it up by announcing plans to start assembly vehicles in Ghana by August next year. Nigeria is the highest consumer of automobile in Africa, both used and new. Why then are these vehicles being assembled outside Nigeria? Incidentally, one area I'm not quite sure I agreed with Dr. Adedipe was when he said Nigeria was wrong by signing the AFTA decree. I'm not quite sure that's the problem. Yes, there is a challenge, but I think it is because we are not focusing on the opportunity. The opportunity for us is to look at the larger African market. What do we need to do right in order to benefit from the potential that exists? I just quickly run through a few points. For government, we're talking of preparing for the 21st century. And our educational system, for instance, I understand that today, for secondary schools to get accreditation to teach business studies, the students must own typewriters. That is the law as it is today. The students must own typewriters. I mean, if we are still teaching our youths how to use typewriter, when the whole world is moving towards robots, and then we want to complain that there are no jobs, we want to complain that there is poverty, I think it is time for us to begin to look inwards. One other interesting thing, my wife is into handicrafts, and she sells to different parts of the world. But incidentally, one of the easiest ways to sell globally is on Amazon. But do you know that you cannot sell anything from Nigeria on Amazon? If you want to, they would advise you to go and set up shop in Niger, in Benin Republic, in Mali. These are the countries that you have to go and open up shops so that you can sell globally. So indeed, if we're looking at eradicating poverty, there are some very low-hanging fruits that whatever Nigeria needs to do to speak to some of these problems, we need to take them seriously. Because the way things are going now, the way poverty is, there is a popular saying that when the poor have no food to eat, the rich will become the food. The poor, the uneducated, the weak, and even the lazy of society have entrusted their future to the rich, the educated, the enlightened, the exposed, the traveled, and the super elites of society as represented in this congregation today. They are saying to you, take care of us. It is your responsibility. If you fail, we make one promise to you. We will not seek your permission to take care of you in our own way, in our own time. Recently, during the reprisal attack on South Africa, during the South African crisis, you notice that a number of vehicles were attacked. They started with the jeeps. So it is the jeeps, the taller ones, that will go first. When they finish, they will go down to the lower level cars. Let me also talk briefly, I know time is against me, but let me talk briefly about the church too. It's unfortunate, Dr. Adedipe talked about it. We need to just review some of our teachings in the church. Because in China, one of the most progressive countries today, there is almost zero church presence. Prosperity teachers are useless in China. Finland has the most stable economy in the world today. They have less than 20 churches. Switzerland has less than 30 churches. Denmark, the third most stable economy in the world, has about 23 churches. They don't pray for economic stability. These countries are considered to have the highest number of atheists, but they are prosperous. Now let's come to Africa. There are about 4,100 churches in the city of Abidjan, 7,000 churches in the city of Kinshasa, 10,000 churches in the city of Lagos, not Nigeria, Lagos alone. In Africa, we have more churches than schools and hospitals combined. We have more pastors than doctors. Everyone is born again, yet crime is on the increase. 80 scammers were arrested by FBI recently in the US. At least from the names, 99% of them are supposed to be Christians. They must have passed through one church or the other. We need to take this challenge that what are we teaching? What exactly are we teaching? Because the roles should be reversed. It is the church that should be prosperous. It is the church that should lay examples. We should do everything we can to take people out of poverty. I've taken more than 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barrow. Thank you very much, Mr. Barrow. Well, one thing that came out straight is that because our keynote speaker told us about the need for jobs, you talked about how all the jobs, at least in manufacturing of cars, seem to be going to other countries, and that is a big challenge. You also mentioned the fact that maybe we need to look at the role of the church in also job creation. Maybe we're busy making people pray a bit too much. After all, you're still supposed to say faith without works is dead. You know, there needs to be some work. I don't know whether that's what we're also saying. I see everybody's a bit quiet, but I think that's why we're asking the role of the church. I think that's it. But let's face it, the church has a very big role because they control a lot of us in terms of what we believe and what we do. So our church role should not be underrated at all. In fact, if anything, it's very, very significant. Maybe it's our strategy that needs to be revisited. But having said that, I'll pass the mic straight to Dr. Maduka, who's going to tell us his own ideas on how to eradicate poverty. Thank you, sir.
God bless you, church. It's a great pleasure to be here this morning. This matter is very simple. Our keynote speaker have done justice to all the topic. But if I want to add few things, when you talk about poverty, if you look at the word poor and try to understand it very well, my definition about it and also the way so many other people defined it, poverty is lack of production. When you are not, poverty does not refer to somebody who lack. It refers to non-productive ones. The government must understand its role to provide and make available enabling environment that can allow trade to thrive. They cannot create a job, but they can facilitate. My pain as a businessman is that we have leaders, frankly, and with utmost respect, in my humble opinion, that lack the intellectual capacity to understand the implication of some of the things they are doing. You can never fix a problem that you are not able to measure. If you cannot diagnose a problem in automobile fixing, in medical health, 90% of the problem is solved when a doctor, a physician, can diagnose his patients and know what his problem is. You can never provide a solution for a problem you do not understand. If you lack the intellectual capacity, you are not called for it, you don't know what to do. So the first thing you need to do is to create enabling environment. A businessman wants to do a business in an atmosphere that is healthy. First of all is that security has to be guaranteed. No serious entrepreneur go to set up a business in a war zone, because it's disincentive for you. You can't even properly plan. So some of you should stop thinking why all the automobile companies are moving into Ghana. Stop wondering yourself why there used to be 34,000 Japanese community in Nigeria, including Itoshu, different one of them. They've all moved to Ghana. Why are they not in Nigeria? Nigeria had not created the atmosphere for business to thrive. The leaders must understand this and begin to talk to themselves and own up to themselves that either they understand this problem to solve it, or they are sitting in a gunpowder. Whether they understand it or not is a question of time. Time will prove that over a period of time, you continue to grow this population, you are growing without giving them a meaningful way of life. The unfortunate thing is that when it happens, nobody is respected. Everybody should be on the run. But will it explode? It will explode. The leaders need to begin to think, how do we provide a life of hope for life? People will live at a time they get to a point when there is no hope for them. They will take their fate in their hand. They are not going to beg you about it. The leaders must understand it and stop playing politics with the life of the people. The problem is not APC. The problem is not PDP. 90% of the problem for me is the politicians. They change prostitutes from one party to the other. When you like, you call them rooters. When you like, you call them criminals. When it suits you, you jump from one to the other and all your sins are forgiven you. It's the people to begin to know that these people have manipulated us enough and begin to take our destiny into our hands and say enough of this nonsense should stop. I am really angry with the leaders. They are the problem and they have to fix the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I really love the passion with which Doctor said, because it's a practical, you have lived and you have shown practical results about what you are talking about. But what you have pointed out now, which I'm going to pass the mic, is the will of the government to get things done. There was something that our lead speaker said about the fact that even the Bible says the poor will always be with you. But does that mean that the will of government to just ignore the fact that you have to address the percentage and the degree of poverty should be ignored? Now, there's something you said, sir, about the will. I had an opportunity once when I was in Abuja, work with the U.S. government through an NGO, and I noticed that all the contracts that came from the U.S. government, even though they said it was aid, you said, 90% of what they did was actually, because it was taxpayers' money, went back to the U.S. government one way or the other. Why? All the contractors had to be U.S. Products. All the consultants had to have some affiliation to U.S. And the one that was even interesting for me was the fact that even one of the consultants told me that, Bumi, if in Nigeria we have any form of transportation or anything that is linked to US and you don't use it, you are not going to get a refund. Sir, you said we should put 30% of our government's expenditure on made in Nigeria products. We are doing eye service even with 30%. What stops us from really putting taxpayers' money to made in Nigeria goods? Now, I will just hand over to Reverend Lemon to say, let us stop playing eye service. Let's get real. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm wired. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think one of the benefits of being the last speaker is actually to be saved the agony of going through all the things you have prepared and just say, I concur with the previous speakers, and then drop the mic. But nevertheless, I will just say a few things. First, I want to join others in commending Dr. Adedipe, a personal friend, for that very, very deep and very incisive lecture. I commended him because he didn't fire over our head. He could have used, econometrics and other jaw-breaking words to explain away so many things that half of us will not understand, but he broke it down in the way we understand. So I will just add a few footnotes to a few things he has said. First and foremost is to say that we should not, as a church, and when I talk about church, I mean the body of Christ generally, we should not look down when we talk about poverty alleviation. According to the scripture, I believe so many of us should be commended for the pro-poor activities that we've embarked upon. In fact, the ministry of our Lord Jesus Christ has at the center poverty reduction. When Jesus Christ read his mandate, he said, the Spirit of the Lord Jehovah is upon me, for he has assigned me to do what? To preach the gospel to the poor. The disciples of John came to him and said, are you who is to come, or should we look for another person? One of the things he said they should look around for is that the poor have the gospel preached to them. The church started in Acts chapter 2 from verse 44, 45, and there was redistribution of wealth. And all of that has continued to today. And time will not permit me to talk about so many things. The reason, Dr. Adedipe, we have not seen an implosion that you talked about, in spite of the mystery that people are going through, is that the church and others have actually been supporting the poor one way or the other. Otherwise, Nigeria will have been on fire. And so we should do more. But what are the more things we need to do? The challenge for the church today, for me, the biggest animal in Nigeria is corruption. You see, if you go through the Transparency International report of 2018, Nigeria brought up the rear, number 144 out of 180 countries that were surveyed, and we got only 27. In other words, we are one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And yet, like Mr. Obaro, Deacon Obaro said, there are so many churches, 10,000 really illegal. Then what are we teaching our people? If we have a critical mass of believers who will fight corruption, we have enough resources in Nigeria to lift Nigeria out of poverty. Like Dr. Adedipe said, in 1990, 2 in 3 Chinese were poor. But between 1990 and 2015, they reduced poverty incidence to 1%. They migrated close to 800 million people out of poverty. And when you look at the countries that are less corrupt, you talk about Singapore, you talk about the Scandinavians, and even Botswana in Africa. They are least corrupt countries, but also poverty incidence in Africa was least in those places. So there is a connection between corruption and poverty. Any area that allows corruption to be endemic, definitely there will be poverty. Because that means that the resources are dissipated. And guess what? Those who steal the resources will never use it. They'll go and hide it somewhere, like Abacha loot and so on and so forth. And the money is never available for anybody. And so the role of the church, for me, the most important role is, let's get our members to say no to corruption in whatever it is they are doing, in the public space, in the private sector, and wherever. If we have a critical mass, just 10 million Nigerians who are believers who will say, no, I will not be corrupt, Nigeria will be a better place. Let me quickly go to government because of time. Indeed, the primary role of government anywhere in the world, apart from security of life and property, is to fight poverty. And we have seen that in China, in other places. What are the things we need to do? First is, let us examine what makes poverty that serious. In addition to what Dr. Adedipe said, about 12, 13 years ago, Central Bank conducted a survey in Nigeria about poverty incidence, and we realized that poverty incidence was bad and it was going to get worse. But what we also realized was that poverty was more of a northern phenomenon. Professor Soludo then was almost eating raw as if he was abusing northerners, and he said, this is a disaster waiting to happen. Boko Haram had not started then. No wonder then. The region that we ranked the least in poverty incident was the region where Boko Haram started first. So the role of government, first, security of life and property. As we sit here, brethren, we have 2.2 million Nigerians who cannot live in their homes. There are 13 states where we have different IDPs. How can they work when they cannot even access their homes? 2.2 million Nigerians. So government must ensure that people live peacefully and people do not have fear. Again, it ties into what Dr. Maduka said. When that happens, there will be, this is an economy that is waiting for opportunities. The other time I was looking at Bangladesh. Bangladesh is very, very poor. You know what? It's the garment country for the whole world. When you go to Macy's, you go to Marks and Spencer abroad, most of those things were made either in China or Bangladesh. Guess what? Half the distance you land in Nigeria. These are things we could be making in Nigeria. The garments industry in Bangladesh is worth close to $30 billion. Why can't we do the same in Nigeria? So government should free up resources by ensuring that there is security of life and property, by fighting corruption, and then going back to what China did. What did China do? And they did right. They dimensioned the poverty. They tried to enumerate and find out where everybody was, and they began to do something about it. You see, fighting poverty is a bipartisan approach. Let us not think, like he said, is PDP, APC. Let's all sit down as stakeholders and say, we want to deal with poverty. First, let's know where they are, and let's begin to have program of work and action that will ensure that people are given opportunity. And one of that, of course, is what Dr. Adedikwe said, which is education. Again, Dr. Adekwe, very excellent paper, but the little disagreement I have is that you talk about quality of education. It's different from your own time, sir. When I also went to the university, my university was one of the world-rated universities in Nigeria today. About 20-something years ago, I sat in Wema, and then we got graduates to apply. What did we find? People who were unemployable. And so we began to have about 6-week or 10-week program for them so that we can make them employable. But it's not the fault of those graduates. It's because we are not aligning curriculum with national needs, which is why today we have graduates that are not employable. What should government also do? Let us bring back technical education. Not everybody today who carries degree can actually work with their degree. There are blue-collar jobbers in US and other places. Why can't we train people to be blue-collar workers, people who train in technical education and so on and so forth? Today, all of us, we have close to, maybe have 1 million cars in Nigeria. Nigerian cars today are computer on wheel. They are not what the Babarisi and Shakiru can do 20, 30 years ago. But those are the things we still have today. Why can't we then get technical education back so that we can have a mass production of Nigerians who can have work to do? He was talking about poverty. Today, minimum wage is 18,000. Even if that worker is not married, even if he's not married, that's 20,000 naira a month. It's still below poverty incidence. Because $1.9 a day translates to 20,400 a month, which is above what is earning now. So for me, it's a joke. We must get people to train. We must train them. And it doesn't take much. With 250,000, 200,000, 100,000, we train people in technical education, whether they are graduates or not, it doesn't matter. But so long as they can use their hand to work. And then we begin to see a lot reversal of the poverty that we're seeing today. So in summary, I believe the church is trying their best. I believe the church needs to do more to speak to people on anti-corruption. We need to do more, though, about microfinance, about helping those who cannot work around us, amongst us, so we engage them. You see youth around you, look, let him come wash your car over the weekend, and then you can give him money as if you employ him. If we all can be our brother's keeper, some of those things will eliminate. And then government should be more alive to their responsibility and take on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Nemo. Now, it's interesting, I'm not going to let any of my panelists go yet so easily. They're going to take 2 minutes, but I want to point out some areas that our key speaker had mentioned. And Madam Chairman, you know, we are here, we'd like you to listen, because we're going to ask them to make 2 suggestions or 3 to government based on a few of the points that I put down. Number 1, you talked about, first, Deacon Obaro mentioned the fact that his wife does some work online, and we've just heard about how technical skills are so important. Imagine why we cannot sell our goods as country Nigeria. That is about brand issues. Let's face it, a country is also a country brand. If you ask people, where would you like to go in the world? Nigeria might not be top of it, but if you ask our youths, where would you like to go? I'm sure some of the countries that will come up, they have no clue where they are going. And that's why they go through Sahara to get there. But the truth of the matter is that they have a good perception of those countries. So we need to really work on our perception as Nigeria as a country. So having said that, our key speaker also mentioned Rwanda. I love when they talk about Rwanda. Rwanda was a country that came from war and has suddenly come into the limelight as a very green country that is now turning things around. But they always fail to mention that 60% of cabinets are women. Doctor, you forgot that part. They are women. And you know why? The mothers are making a difference. And I'm not saying it's just because you need both men and women in this society. But for us to eradicate, we need to get to brass tacks to say what are the real issues. So in poverty, women and children are one of the most affected. Like you said, they can't go to their homes. You can imagine what people are going through. So I'm just saying, don't forget that we need to get back to the fact that it's an inclusive society, both in terms of all gender, all races, and our youths. And now, sir, I would like to ask you, Dr. Maduka, please, can you recommend? Because Doctor gave us consequences of poverty. He gave us a list. In fact, I couldn't write anymore. My paper finished by the time you told us all the consequences of poverty. But having said that, sir, from a man who is so experienced and is very industrious, can you recommend to government 3 things they should do to eradicate? Because we are going to 60. Nigeria 60 is supposed to be glittering like a diamond. We have to polish our diamond. So over to you, sir.
I will recommend that the government take the life of the people serious. First of all, I believe poverty can be eradicated. Nature teaches us that when you have a children that you didn't inspire the children to work hard to earn a living, but you teach your children that every month they will collect house rent. You build so much house and they will share the money. And they live a life believing their father has so much wealth from house rent. These children grow up every day looking for party to go and how to collect money at the end of the month. And suddenly, people start leaving the man's home and nobody to rent that home anymore for people to get rent to eat. What do you think will become of those children? Because you never really built a resourceful people. This is what this country look like. I will recommend to government first to find the will to practice through federalism. What do I mean by practice through federalism? When we were growing up, the little we went through school, we saw granite pyramid in the northern part of Nigeria. We saw cocoa. What different things people were able to do because different regions were competing with each other, working hard to contribute to the national development. Awolowo introduced the first African television. Every region were working hard to excel and be the best. Later in life, few people, very few number of people gathered together and say, we the people, and they wrote constitution on behalf of me and you. And say, we the people. Where were we when they were doing that? They didn't speak our mind. They say, we the people, and say so many things that has nothing to do with us. And as a result of it, you find today everybody is struggling for central position. We must weaken that central position so that every region will go back to productivity and working hard to survive. We have what it takes. It's not outside of us, it's within us to be able to make the change that we require. We competed in education, we competed in skill, we competed in every range, and we were making progressive until we get to the position where we amalgamate this thing and put it all power in the center. What I am advocating is the government should honor it up to himself, because it's the few elites and politicians that have taken the life of the people into captivity and make them prisoners to them by keep on manipulating the people. When it like, they tell you it's religion that is Nigerian problem. When you like, they tell you it is ethnicity. They manipulate every one of us. But I don't have problem with my Hausa's friends. I don't have problem with my Yoruba's friends. People were asking me, am I an Igbo man or Yoruba? Why is your second in command is from, it doesn't matter anything. Dangote is not looking for the best northerner to employ. When it comes to economic development, you are looking for the person who will give you the best result. You want to get a result. So let's break this system, this central system down. That is what I'm advocating. You will see Nigeria make a tremendous progress in a very short period of time that is unprecedented. God bless you.
Very much, sir. So that is a very, very emotional appeal. The fact that I like the analogy of the family where you say we should not just rely on the father, that just because your father had been rich, that each center should be more empowered, each of the governments, all our state governments should be more empowered to produce so that they don't rely only on our federal might for everything to happen. Thank you, sir. Now we're going to, please, the members of the congregation and our people who are here, honor our fathers and mothers, we are going to take a few questions immediately after this. So please, if you have questions, you can indicate by putting up your hand so that we can also ask the keynote speaker a question. He's right here. We will bring a chair for him, sir, to answer the question. So please feel free to ask questions. So I'm going to ask Reverend Lemon to answer, what would you recommend to government? 2 or 3, before I come to Deacon Obaro. We're changing the order because we also want to hear from you again, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go into that, I'm not the chief marketing officer for Coast Carries, but I think this church owes him a debt of gratitude. For over 26 years, he has a number 2 man who used to be a member of this church, Josiah Samuel, a Yoruba man. And I think that's what he was alluding to. Very, very commendable. Thank you very much. Yes, what government can do, a lot rests on the shoulders of government. Given the resource endowment that we have, and then learning from China. If China can migrate 99% of their poor people just within 29 years, and they are reducing it to 1%. And the plan is that by next year, 2020, there will be 0 poverty level in China. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can just sit down and look at what is it that they have done by having programs that are pro-poor. If we take corruption away. And when I talk about corruption, it's not just to look at few people and then, no. If we can go down the level, and then in the budgeting system, we have programs that ensure that when people are educated. You see, if we don't deal with that population, sir, you said population is not a problem. I mean, the Emir of Kano said something yesterday which is profound, and said, and I'm glad he said it as a northerner, that our population will be a problem if we don't deal with it. The reason is because, you see, unlike China, China has a central planning economic system. We don't have that here. And if we continue to grow our economy at below 2%, and then we're having population growth of 2.6, some even say 3.2, we will be multiplying more poverty. We need education so that people can know over there that they also should not be having the children, the number that they are having. Otherwise, there will be more Okada riders in Lagos. We are not seeing anything yet. And more, you see, because you don't need visa to come from Sokoto to Lagos. And you can be here. So if you are here and you are doing family planning and they are not doing family planning over there, it's tomorrow's problem that will hit us in the face, and then all of us will be in it. So there must be a national program that will address that. Let us at least work hard to ensure that the population growth is within what we can plan. And then we have each government, each time we talk about government, we talk about federal government, but forgetting that we are a federation. The state government and local government also have a role to play. Instead of having bogus, for instance, a normal state will have 30 commissioners, another 20 special advisors. 70-80% of the money we make, we spend on those privileged people, when we should reverse it and spend 90% on the people. Maybe 50% on infrastructure. Again, infrastructure gap also feeds into poverty. Because if you don't have infrastructure, that woman who is doing hairdressing that needs electricity in that corner will not be able to do it. So government should address infrastructure head on. They should reverse the 70-30 expenditure pattern and spend 30% only on recurrent expenditure. We don't need bicameral legislature, ladies and gentlemen. Senate, House of Representatives, and all this large number of people. Let them go and find work to do. All over the country, we need just 100 people to make laws. There are too many. Those who should be, there are too many people who should actually be sweating, working, and they go there, they play to the gallery, and then they have privileges. These are money meant for the poor. It's our common patrimony. Government should divert resources and ensure that we have a number of people that are in Nigeria who live below poverty line. There must be pragmatic program. There are about 6, 7. It's just because of time. I have it listed in the short paper I have that China did. Know where they are, organize them, and then let there be direct cash transfer to them, and then let them teach them to do what they need to do to create economic activities in those villages. And like he said, if we do not address rural-urban drift, we are not going anywhere. You know all those jungles where they kidnap people, there are places where farming should be happening. If farming is not happening, kidnap zone will be there. So if we reverse it and we get government to embrace agriculture, get people back to land, then we will be able to address poverty.
Thank you very much, Reverend. So, in fact, one of the things I took from what you said, sir, is that it's possible that we get to a point where our government, those in the houses of assembly, should actually be volunteer work. So that if they are volunteers, we'll have less problems when it comes to campaign, because you find very few people will go because they are not going to be paid this very big. I mean, maybe we should advocate for that. You find suddenly there are more women in government when it's volunteer work. But anyway, let's see how it goes. Now, having said that, we really want to eradicate poverty. So, sir, you talked about technical expertise, and that came from Reverend, and I know that you're an expert in that area. Tell us, sir, what's your recommendation to government to be candid? What can, just 2 or 3 things that they need to do to move us forward?
Well, the first thing, talking about skills. Scripture says, my people perish for lack of oil. Oil. In Nigeria, that is the version. Because we are focused so much on oil. And because we are focused so much on oil, it has prevented us from seeing the real opportunities, the real alternatives that are available. And if you look at the world history, look at the countries that are doing very well. A country like Taiwan, rocky country, surrounded by Typhoon Sea, they import everything, including sand for construction. They import sand from China to construct in their own country. And yet, they have the 4th largest reserve in the world. How did they do it? Skills. Teaching their people. We need to take education seriously. We need to know that the economy of the future is not going to be mineral-based. It's going to be brain-based. Having said that, we also, on an immediate basis, need to look at what is happening in Nigeria today. I'm in one of the sectors that is very badly affected. There is what you call the Canada disease. If you ask all our young people today, those who have not gone, whether they are telling you or not, they have applied. And it's like the nation is not sensitive to what is happening. Our best brains are emigrating, and we we just assume that there are no consequences. There are damn consequences.
It only means we will be buying more and more because the things we should be producing here, we will be busy importing them. And when you talk of corruption, with all sense of modesty, we've had the privilege of working on TSA, which has helped, to throw light on a number of things in government. But I also believe that the government itself lost an opportunity. An opportunity in the sense that a product like that coming out of Nigeria, what the Western countries do is that when they have such successful products, they back up such products. They give all the support. When you hear things like Alibaba, Alipay, and all of that, it is the Chinese government that is supporting them. Governments support their own and then begin to push it out to the world. We need to learn from that. It's not so much because it's Remita today, but that there are many more that are coming up that government needs to back up these technology products and push to the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, we're going to now take some questions from the ground, from our audience. In actual fact. Sorry, why I use the word ground is that I was thinking about the fact that there's a lot of groundwork to be done. And you see, there was something you said about this brain drain, and that is another problem about eradicating poverty. Whether we like it or not, you said something that government protects its own. It's only in Nigeria that will have rules that will say only certain qualified technocrats should do jobs, yet they will import foreign consultants to do something as simple as brand building. How on earth is a country going to import consultants to build about your own brand? Whereas those of us in private sector, why we even got into business was that they wanted our local expertise to sell their international brands. So it's an irony. So let us not even understand where we are going. Then you also said something, sir, about government having to support its own. Have you noticed that even when you have people going for either, as we call it, immigration, have you noticed that they only import the brainy ones? They will tell you that if you are very intelligent, they will take you. They don't take the people that are not. So they're taking our best brains, our best people. So we really need to get government. And that's why, Madam Chairman, we really need you to help us take some of these suggestions back. So can we have the representative from civil society? May he stand up if he has a question, or her? The representative from PFN, the representative from a student body may stand up so they can know where to take the mic to. And we're also going to take questions online, and then we should be able to wrap it up in the next 15 minutes maximum. So, sirs, anyone from civil society, please can you indicate so that we know where to? Yes, please stand up. Please, sir. Can someone take the mic? There's someone right there. Is there a mic there at the back? Sorry, sir. Excuse me. The person there, he stood up first, then the second person, yes. Will you quickly come forward then? Maybe you need to, or do we take the mic backward? I think maybe they should come forward if there are no mics in the center. Please come forward. Thank you, sir. You introduce yourself quickly and ask your question, and you can direct your question to whoever you would like to answer. No, sir. The person in the T-shirt first, sir. Yes. You are the first, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for
Thank
the
you, sir. Yes.
And Dr. Adedikwe's very erudite and practical, rewarding thinking. The youth, about 3 Olusegun Adeyinde is my name, NGO, Hudo, and also PFN official. The youth of the churches, about 3 years, want to revolt against the leadership in the church. I think what's the problem? They show me in their phone. They say the best 20 richest pastor in Nigeria. And when I look at it, they are all in dollars. Those millions are in dollars. And so the youth are saying, when there is training and entrepreneurship skill, the bank in Nigeria will tell them to bring sun and moon. And they will frustrate a very viable employment instrument because they don't have collateral. Can the short from the surplus fund, apart from evangelism and mission, can the short from those surplus funds, those youth are showing me the best 20 richest pastor in Nigeria, can the short devote 40% of such fund, according to Dr. Adedikwe, according to Tunde Lemon, and all the people in the house, can the church be persuaded within a little time to invest substantial amount on training and enterprising support to grow the church tithe and job? Thank you.
Thank you. Who's you directing your question to in particular? Do you have anyone in particular? Because we have our GO here.
Dr. Tunde Lemon, please.
So, okay, well, Doctor, I think we'll take the questions and then we'll address them after he has said the question. He just wants to know whether some of the maybe economics that go to some of the pastors that are in very high places can also be shared as NGO subsidy for some projects, putting it mildly. Yes. Okay, the next person, please.
Yeah, praise the Lord. I want to stand, or permit me to stand on the existing protocol. I'm additional by name. My question is directed to the government representative here, the secretary to the government of the Federation. Now, my question is it possible for us as a nation to do without IMF and World Bank? If it is possible, please, I want to know. Reason why I asked this question is that the lecturer told us that most countries that comes to interfere in our business will always look at their own interests first. And if that's the case, then it means if we follow their dictates, we'll be playing into their hands. Praise the Lord. Number two, I have two questions.
Okay, because of 1 minute per person, please. It's 1 minute.
Thank you. My name is Kehinde Shogule. Maybe my question will be addressed to the lead speaker, or maybe some comments too. One is, why are we looking up to governments? Do they really care about us? Are they concerned about us? Can we as a people, or even the church, begin to look for other models of delivering value to the people without looking up to governments? That's one. Two, the church itself. The church itself. Does the church need to can the church begin to recognize that they have a duty also to the people? The first missionary journey is to take people to God. I think the church should be considering, how do we take people into abundance? God himself said, I will bless you. Go forward and multiply. In all this scenario we see in Nigeria, with all the resources we have, with the way the church has grown in recent times, taking the church from Nigeria to the rest of the world, can we not create wealth and we can also influence the rest of the world with the knowledge that we have? Thank you.
All right, hold on, please. I think that question is directed, Madam Chairman. We'll just allow you to wrap up, because it looks like some questions they said about government, and I'm sure for you to have spent so many hours here, you will have a parting note of hope for the people. We'll come to you last, man. We'll come to you last, Madam Chairman. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Todi Bankole, co-founder of the Humanitarian Aid Program for Migrants. According to World Bank, immigration is one of the very effective tools to reducing poverty and to boost the economic growth of a country. However, Nigeria has a very low percentage for immigration. My question is for the government: what are the practical steps the government is doing to improve immigration in Nigeria and to globally market Nigeria as a country capable of receiving immigrants? Thank you.
Do you have, sorry, who would you like to answer your question? You might have someone in your mind.
It's directed at the government.
Okay, all right.
District.
The panel will take care of that question.
The question is to the government concerning paper industry. What are they doing concerning Wopin, paper mill, Jeba, and Okoboku? Right now, no production of paper in Nigeria, and we're talking of education. Let them do something. The factory is being wasted over there. God bless you.
So we'll take one more and then we'll get a panel to answer.
My name is Kola Owolabi. I'm a human capital developer. My suggestion is to the government. I think the issue of integrity is fundamental, and everything begins from the budgeting system. A budgeting system that allows you to put in the budget to maintain a website for 800 million for a year, and the professional bodies keep quiet. A budgeting system that allows you to build 1 kilometer of road for 1 billion, and the professionals keep quiet, gives room for all these problems that we have. So we should look at doing things properly. Even in education, a policy that allows somebody that scores 300 in JAMB not to be admitted, and somebody that scores 20 to be admitted into the same class. It frustrates the citizens, and they don't want to belong to Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll answer that's the last person. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Yabode Oguniro. I lecture at the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. I want to align with all the submissions that have been made, but I also want to talk about my own personal experience. I want to say that our students are very, very intelligent. But in order for us to align with this knowledge-based education that we're talking about, there is need for the private to support us. If you come to the university, it's like it's a shadow of itself. And I'm talking about alumni. If you are finished from a university, I think this is the time to go back and do something, to that university, do something in your department, do something in your faculty that will help our educational system. It's very, very important. When we call on our alumni, it's like they've forgotten all about the university. I think each and every one of us here, we owe our university that duty in Nigeria to go back and do something. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, I was told we should ask and we shall allow you. So you've asked. So you'll be the last person now.
Okay, ma. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's one of my best days on earth. One of our keynote speakers talked about brain drain. I'm a young person. I would have been a victim of brain drain. And when I saw this lecture topic, I was really excited about it. And I really want to thank Mr. Biodo Adedike that did a very good justice for me. I'm going home with a lot of knowledge. But this is my question. I'm an entrepreneur. And from my service year, from secondary school, I've started entrepreneurship journey by little bits of what I've learned in my Ijebu factor and all that. And coming along this way, I got in my NYC year. I identified a problem in a community, in a very local community called Kutigi. I established a vocational education system that eradicated the youth from sitting under the trees to begin to do one or two things. Fantastic move, and I continued. Now, fully in an entrepreneurship journey, there are some realities that dawn on us. And one of it is the fact of funding. Now, you mentioned about microfinance bank. You and I know that microfinance bank percentage rate ranging from 26% and above. I, for example, rebranded Kuli Kuli, our local snacks. And I started production factory, even from the north, moving into different aspects of Nigeria and off the shore of Nigeria. Now we come into funding. How do you bring a balance to the banking sector to bring down all these excessive things? A bank manager does not need 6, 7, 10 cars to run a road system, knowing that we are talking about economic building. How do we bring down all this excessive? Because if we are looking at the government, we're also looking at the private sector. How do you cut down on all these expenses and be able to say, let's give affordable rates to these ideas? My turnover within 8 months will alarm you. But when the funding does not bring in the balance, how do we do it? And how do we intend to address this?
All right, thank you very much. So, Mr. Adedipe, I guess you will start, Doctor rather. Over to you, sir.
How many of the questions?
Just take the ones.
Okay, thank you so very much. All right, so I will take those that I can deal with right away, especially avoiding the ones meant for the government. The first question talks about where the list of richest pastors, is there a possibility of using those financial resources to either part fund or serve as cash collateral for access to loans? I think in that regard, some of us might not see the full information about what the church is doing. I know, for example, the church where I worship, we have a microfinance scheme there, which is not, a registered one, so to say, but done locally, fund put together by the leadership of the church. But it now runs on principles by which a regular microfinance bank operates. So which means within that church, members have access to such facilities. And they have quite a number of beneficiaries who have grown their business to a level where they don't even need that support any longer. So at least I know that one firsthand. And I'm aware that this exists in a couple of other churches. The church is intervening, no doubt, but like Reverend Lemo said earlier on, what we should be looking at is the church doing more. So it's not that the church is not doing. So, and of course, it's on the two sides that we had also mentioned. Training for them, and of course, entrepreneurial support. Well, if you ask me the second question, even though directed at the government, it says, can we do without World Bank and IMF? I'll say, yes, we can. Because the idea simply is, anytime they bring suggestions, you sit back and do proper dimensioning of what they suggest to you. And I'll give an illustration here. When we were working on FSS 2020, that was in 2007, I made a suggestion that Nigeria could create an infrastructure bond on the back of our pension fund that is allowed pension managers to invest in that. Properly structured infrastructure fund, and I remember clearly it was the representative of IMF that said no country had ever done that before, so we shouldn't do it. But 8 years later, 2015, World Bank suggested Nigeria should do the same. Meaning we lost 8 years of the opportunity we would have gotten from that. Date back to 2004, I recommended to the federal government then that looking at Ajaokuta, because we didn't even mention that, looking at Ajaokuta, at that point in time, $583 million US will buy the raw materials and other input that will take off that entity and run its 9-month cycle of production and sale. And so it will need a single cent again from the government, because it was still very much intact. But the World Bank came and said, no, Nigeria should sell it. And of course, I was a part of that process way back earlier in 1988. So I know the politics involved. There's international politics involved in that. So the lesson really is that they will always come with their own suggestions. But we have to dispassionately interpret what they suggest and decide what to do. Where my friend Ken Ishogule said, why look up to government? Well, I won't say that government will not help, because let's face it, if Nigeria is one of the top 20 countries in the world in 2018 that are reformed, certainly government is making some efforts. And we need to acknowledge that and commend the government for that. But what we say is that the government should do more. But what we are also saying is, when we are pointing to government, we should remember that the other fingers we have are pointing towards ourselves. Just like the panelists here said, what am I doing within my own space, my circle of influence, to impact the lives of those that are poor and in need around me? The issue of immigration to reduce poverty. Well, somebody once mentioned in a conversation we had this week that Nigeria should not be complaining about brain drain. That globally there is brain redistribution. That is what is happening, brain redistribution. So, but the important thing here is, how do we create an environment to retain our best brains, and how do we create an environment to attract the best brains from the rest of the world? But all of that will depend on what you want to do with those brains, which is what an entrepreneur anyway does. So it's a question of making Nigeria attractive if it comes to branding that you mentioned. So the issue of integrity in budgeting, that's a big one. Because anytime you talk about numbers, there's always a black box somewhere. So what now are the contents of the black box? Until you open up the black box, you will never know what is inside it. And I've been privileged to do some work in that area. And there's still a lot we can do in terms of the cost of governance. Just like Reverend Lemo said earlier on, we need to switch from 30-70 capital recurrent to 70-30 capital 70, recurrent 30. It can be done. With what the numbers, it is possible. It's just that we don't have the, let me call it the strength of character, the will to do it. But with what the numbers, that it can be done in 5 years. And the evidence is there, documented. Can be done in 5 years. Okay? And of course, the other one about, yes, our students are very intelligent. I support the request that the town should give support to the gown. It's important. Everyone gives back. And that is what this is all about. And of course, especially for people like us, we must also make time. We can't all go back to university as lecturers. And maybe, on occasions, we go back to talk to those younger ones and encourage them that hope is not lost. I think I've talked to all this except the funding team. Maybe I'll leave that to Reverend Lemo. So thank you so very much.
Doctor, yes, we're going to go, but I want Doctor to contribute to, especially the brain drain. I know you have, through your prolific business, I'm sure you must have immigrated some brains to also execute some of the jobs in Nigeria. Over to you, sir.
Let me summarize all the things that I have said, because part of the thing we are discussing here today is the role of the church in this poverty eradication. I think the church needs to continue to teach the principle of God's word and also advocate mentorship, or what we can call apprenticeship. Somebody like myself, for some of you who may not know, didn't have the opportunity that quite a number of you here have, having lost my father at the age of 4. But I grew up in a church that believed the principle of the word of God. At the age of 14, before I turned 15, I made a commitment to Christ and gave my life to Jesus Christ. I've been a Christian in the last 46 years, when I committed my life to Christ. But I used to sleep in a small shop, in Bobo stop there, without any formal education, but was brought up on the principle of the word of God, what need to be done. Grew up with understanding that God would take care of his own. My uncle met me one day when he came to and found out we were in church fasting for 3 days, and out of anger gave me 200 naira in 1976 as my steward, as my reward or pay for 6.5 years of serving him. But I spoke back to my uncle in faith. I said, God hardened the heart of Pharaoh in the land of Egypt to show his strength. And I pray he keep you alive 5 years today to see what is going to come out of this. And I left with that determination to build an institution today that they call Koscharis Group. The church needs to get back to the basis to let people know the fundamental, that this is the beginning. Every knowledge started from here. This is the institution of the knowledge. That if you follow the principle of this God's word, that the rest will be history. Today, we've built a multinational organization that anybody who wants to be honest will live and testify and see what God has been able to do. But the same God continues to inspire us, because you need to begin to think, what do you do? Not just for yourself, but to power to influence the environment around you, to impact the community where you are living. So we didn't just go in money making. Today we are into rice farming, and we are growing rice now in about 3,000 hectares of land. I am saying that the church can do more, because what was able to make me who I am was the basis of the foundation of the principle of God's word that was imparted on me at my younger age. I understood what it means by trusting God, and God has been able to populate me to be able to do what I did today. So the church still need to play this important role by helping people and getting some mentorship to give skill acquisition on people, letting them know Jesus never gave money or handout to people. Those who came for handout, he didn't encourage it, but he taught the people what to do to be able to be meaningful to themselves, and taught them how to avoid wastages. Nigeria built in a culture of wastages. When Jesus, after feeding 5,000 people, he told them to pick the crop on the ground. Why is he referring to? It's teaching them financial management, how to manage resources. There is so much financial embarrassment in church today, which ought not to be. The church should be a community where the leaders themselves understand how to manage and deploy resources and impart all of this in the life of the people, that with the faith they have in God, you will see people who will start something small and be able to achieve something great. That's what I think part of the things the church need to do to be able to turn the situation around for us. But to say there is going to be 100% poverty eradication, no. But you can minimize it, but we can do things to influence the life of people to be a little bit better. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. Over to you, our technical director and deacon. Over to you, sir. And then we'll take Reverend last.
Let me just respond to one question by Mr. Kende Shogule on can we do without government? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that as an individual, I want to advise you that do everything you can to maximize all the opportunities you have. As an individual, I want to advise you that every problem you have, see an opportunity in it and make the most of it. When Dr. Maduka was talking, I remember the story of Thomas Edison. This was somebody whose business was having massive problems. He was awaiting a court judgment. He was accruing a debt of about $5 a day. He was in the middle of a major experiment, and the gas people came to cut off his gas. And the next thing was, how am I going to continue my experiment? He started thinking, and that was how he went into electricity and became the founder of General Electric. So our problem in there lies an opportunity. No, in the sense that, especially in Nigeria, government itself becomes a problem at a point. If they see that you are succeeding or trying to do any little thing, one policeman is waiting, one different obstacles outside your area of influence, which goes back. I mean, this is a very long topic. When Dr. Maduka talked about the regionalization of Nigeria, I mean, go back to a form of decentralization. Break down the kind of control you have at the center. Let regional governments, state governments take charge of a lot more things. There are lots of potentials, things that can happen. But with the structure that we have now, it is going to be difficult to unleash our full potential. Thank you.
Very quickly, because of time, rich pastors, how can they share the... You see, let us not profile people in that manner. For me, what is important is the major takeaways here is the role of the church. Because you see, some of the time, the people you are trying to castigate and so on and so forth, if you drill down, they've done a lot on poverty eradication. I mean, there's a church today that has a university that is ranked the best in Nigeria. I mean, and yet, I mean, if the leader is writing whatever it is, you don't know, most of these people are bivocational. They run their businesses and